You ready? Here we go. Scientific notation. I think you've seen some of this either in math or in science, but if you haven't, scientific notation is a great shortcut. This is something we are going to use for the rest of the year, unlike many of the other little mini lessons coming up. During this course, we're going to use models, often mathematical, to help us understand a particular set of phenomena, except I have to start out always by telling you almost everything that I teach you this year will be wrong. Depending on how deep a dive you want to go, most of these models are going to be wrong. And much of what you've already learned in science is totally wrong. Don't write this down. What is this? I think I saw your lips move correctly, Courtney, didn't I? No? Oh, sorry. What is this? A lousy sketch of. First of all, I should be careful. It's not an atom, because you've never seen an atom, and everything that you've learned about atoms is mostly wrong. I know the inner ring is wrong. I should only put 2 electrons there. Is that what you're getting at? Fine, I can fix that. It's a Bohr what? And it's a lousy model. Although it explains an awful lot, it's not even remotely close to what's going on, because it teaches you to think of electrons, for example, as these little round dots, and they're not. They're weirder than anything you can imagine. If you ask a physicist, do I believe in Santa Claus? They'll say no. Do I believe in electrons? I'm not sure I do. It depends what you mean by that. The best definition for an electron is it's the answer to a really, really complicated quantum wave equation. That's what an electron is. But we don't do that in grade 8 and grade 9 because that would terrify you. Most of what I teach you is going to be reasonably accurate, but we can't go down a level. For example, we'll often ignore air resistance because air resistance is really difficult mathematically, and so we'll pretend that everything that we're using is either in a vacuum or a nice perfect aerodynamic sphere that isn't moving any air around. They're going to be wrong. But because our models will be mathematical, some good math skills I wrote here are a must. I'm going to say this. If you're not a good math student, everybody that I've had that's taken physics with me has said this has really helped them mathematically as well. I truly believe that taking physics helps you also in your math courses. You will, by the end of the year, be far better at mathematics than you thought, because I will push you to do an awful lot in your head, because I'm naturally lazy. Here's a review of some things. Scientific notation. Here is an example of a number in scientific notation. 6.36 times 10 to the 12. You can write that down if you want or not. Here is an example of a number that is not in scientific notation. 64.2 times 10 to the third. What's the difference between those two? Why is that second one not in scientific notation? Sesame Street is brought to you today by some numbers. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. There's a little game that Sesame Street used to play. What's wrong with that second one? What about the decimal place? Okay, so the rule for scientific notation is only one digit to the left of the decimal. Not 2, not 3, not 12, 1. Okay, so that is not, oh, sorry, this number is or isn't in scientific notation. What would we circle here? No. Is not. If you're transforming a number into scientific notation, what do? Again, you can write this down if you want to, or you can just watch. If I wanted to write in scientific notation, what would I do? First of all, where is the decimal right now? It's invisible because I'm lazy and I didn't bother writing it, but where is it technically sitting, the decimal place right now in this number? Right there. Yes? You count the number of places the decimal is going to move. In this case, five. If the decimal point moves to the left, which I just did, The power of 10 will be positive. Positive. I tend to abbreviate. You can write the word positive if you wish, but my abbreviation for the word positive is a plus sign with a VE. My abbreviation for the word negative is a minus sign with a VE. I don't just put a plus, because if I see just a plus by itself, I think there must be an equation somewhere that I'm missing. If I want to represent the word positive plus VE, the word negative minus VE. It's a little thing, not in any textbooks, but this is Mr. Dueck's little shorthand. What about if I wanted to write this in scientific notation? Again, I count the number of places the decimal moves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I stop right there, 7, because I want one digit to the left of the decimal. And I would call that one negative. My writing is messy. If you ever can't read my writing, ask. I will never make fun of somebody who can't read my writing. It's actually improved, but there's a reason why I pre-type almost everything. Star, 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 bold font. I think it should be said something like this. It is very important to learn how your calculator handles scientific notation. Every calculator has its own quirks. And many of you have not been doing scientific notation in the most efficient, least error-prone manner. I'm going to teach you how to use your calculator. Next page. Rewrite the following in scientific notation. The Earth weighs that much. It does. Mr. Dueck? Yes, Jackson. How do I know how much the Earth weighs? I'll show you how we calculated it, but in Physics 12. It was one of the first things we calculated after we figured and measured Newton's gravitational constant of the universe. What? Take Physics 12. Anyways, that is the mass of the Earth. I don't want to write it out. I want to write it in scientific notation. What's the front part going to be? 5.98. And the rule is stop writing when they all become zeros. And then we count. I find I still, for large numbers, have to draw little loops with my pencil and count. You don't have to. Evan, you might like putting dots above the zeros, but I would encourage you, track it somehow. Just counting, you're almost always going to miss one somewhere along the way, and that's a mistake that we can avoid. So I'm going to go like this. Actually, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 3 is 21. 22, 23. I'm getting 24. Double check me, count on your own, make sure, but yeah. You can double check, because I think on the back of your green sheet, I did also give you the mass of the Earth, and I think it does say on the back of your green formula sheet 5.98 times 10 to the 24th. Somewhere. I gave you the mass of the moon and the sun. I give you a few of the solar or stellar masses. Yeah? Okay. Oh, kilograms, units always. I will take off on a test or on a quiz marks if you don't put units, and I'll convince you of why that's the case by playing a telephone call for you later. One proton has a charge of that many coulombs. What's the front part of the scientific notation going to be? What point what? 1.6 or 6.1? Yeah, 1.6. A common mistake kids make is they think, oh, I start on the end and work my way this way. No, it's always read that way. So 1.6 times 10. And I always write the negative right away, because I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to put it when it's a small number, because I was so thrilled that I counted correctly. I forgot the negative. 19? Coulombs, abbreviation for coulombs is a capital C. Charge is measured in coulombs, named after a scientist whose last name was Coulomb. The temperature of the sun is 15 million degrees Kelvin. Pardon me? How many zeros? Well, let's see. I would write 15 million. Is that million yet? Is that million yet? Now, I might try and do this completely in my, actually no, here I would write out in what we call standard notation the number, and now I'll go scientific notation. 1.5 times 10 to the, I think 7, isn't it? And then it's degrees Kelvin, lowercase k. So far, we're doing all this by hand. We'll start to do this on our calculator in a second. Rewrite in standard form, 5.4 times 10 to the negative 7 meters. How would I unscientific notation this? Yeah. I think even before that, you haven't had me before. I'm big on writing something down so that it gets my mental juices kind of flowing. I would write this 0 point because I know that's going to be in front of everything everywhere and anyhow. And you notice it also gave me the decimal point as a reference to track. Okay, you don't have to put the 0 in front of the decimal, but you can. To the negative what, Rowan? 10 to the negative what? So I go like this. Count with me. 1. Count with me. 2, keep going. 5, 6, and then the 5 is the 7th digit, and the 4. Most common mistake, kids do 7 zeros and then the first digit. No, the first digit is the, yes. Meters. I have to be honest, aside from this lesson, and maybe on a quiz for this unit, because I'm supposed to assess you on it, I would never write this out this way. I would leave it in scientific notation. Generally, if a number is in the hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, I won't write it in scientific notation. And Julianne, the same as if I get smaller. But as soon as I'm past a certain amount, forget it. Why would I write all those zeros? So 4.23 times 10 to the 3 joules. I'd write down the 4. 10 to the what? Does that mean this? Don't write this down. Don't write this down. 1, 2, 3 zeros? No, that's the most common mistake. Instead, I write down the 4. 10 to the what? 1, 2. I guess I need 1 0. There's my 3. And yes, joules. So, every one of you has a scientific notation button. It's dedicated just to scientific notation, and I want to encourage you to use it. Some of you are going to want to type, don't write this down, times and 10 and hit your exponent button. You don't need to, and that might introduce error in more complicated stuff later on. What you want to do on your calculator is you want to see if you have an EXP button or an EE button, or a times 10 to the N button. Most of you, it'll be right beside the equal sign, just to the left. Some of you, it'll be right above the number 7. If you cannot find your scientific notation button, or you're not sure, now is the time to call me over and I will help you with your calculator. I'll pause the video. Each of you is going to have a slightly different display, but that scientific notation button, whatever yours is, it's a great shortcut because it actually, when you hit it, it contains the times and the 10 and the to the power of. You don't need to hit times or 10 or to the power of. So if I wanted to type 6.23 times 10 to the negative 5, I would type 6.23, and then this is where you'll hit your particular button. If yours is an EXP, write that in there. If yours is an EE, write that in there. If yours is a times 10 to the, write that in there. and then negative 5. On my calculator, now, other issues, look up please. That's a subtraction sign. That's a negative. If you put a subtraction sign there, you'll get an error on a good calculator. So if you get an error, first thing you want to double check is, did you hit subtract or the negative button? My calculator, if I hit enter to store it, on mine it looks like that. Mine does a little small capital E. On, who's got the Casios? I think on yours it actually shows a little times and a little 10, and it might even raise you as a little exponent up there, depending on how new yours is. Okay? Sorry, Erica, on your crappy one there, it's going to just do a space and then have the number sitting there, and it's going to expect you to figure out what it's getting at. And sorry, I think yours as well. Mr. Dueck, whoever was calling me? Yeah. Good. Let me pause again. What you want to avoid, don't write this down, just watch. I have some kids that like to type 6.23. Let's try that again, Mr. Dueck. 6.23. And they like to go times 10 to the power of negative 5. The risk with that is your calculator won't know that these two numbers here are attached to each other, and weird stuff will happen, especially when you're dividing. So it's more typing for less accuracy. That's a double loss in my mind. Let's try some of these. Performing calculations. Turn the page. We're going to use our calculators. My apologies to those of you who have the calculators that I've made fun of, because you're going to find out already you're at a bit of a handicap. Sorry. All right. What does a fraction bar mean mathematically? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Okay, so we're going to divide. Is this a fraction? Everybody say yes.
Yes.
Is there more than one thing on the top? Yeah? I'm going to put a big bracket around the top. Don't start typing yet. Is there more than one thing on the bottom? I'm going to put a big bracket around the bottom. However, I will not put a bracket right there. Just watch. To me, this is confusing. Bracket, bracket, 1.8, scientific notation, close, open, 2.6. Don't write this down, just watch. There's a lot of brackets to track there. I only use brackets to show the top and the bottom. What do two brackets side by side mean mathematically? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. It's way easier to hit a times sign there. So I don't even know if I typed that in right. I figured I hadn't. I'm missing a bracket or something like that. Oh, I got to open a bracket here. That might be the right answer. I'm not even sure. Get your calculator out and go key by key with me. Here's how I would handle this. First of all, I would ask myself, self, is this a fraction? Answer. Is there more than one thing on the top? Open up a bracket. 1.8, type that. Hit your scientific notation button. Mine's that thing. What's the exponent I'm going to put in on the 10? Negative button 3. Don't hit 10, don't hit times, just negative 3. Do not close off the bracket because we're still on the top. What do two brackets right there mean? Times. 2.6. Scientific notation button 5. Have we reached the end of the top?
Yes.
Close off the top. Close bracket. I think that's way easier to read than the top line in the previous one, yes? What does a fraction mean? Get your divided by. I'm lucky on my calculator, it actually does a slash for divided by, which kind of looks like a fraction, so that's the win. Is there more than one thing on the bottom?
Yes.
Better open up a bracket. 9. Scientific notation button. Oh, scientific notation button. No, come on. Scientific notation button. There we go. 8. I'm not going to close off a bracket, open up a new bracket. What do 2 brackets side by side mean? It's way easier to read your calculator by just hitting a times sign there. By the way, this is a handheld computer, so my times is an asterisk. On most of yours, your times will be the standard little X thingy. 1.3. Scientific notation. Erica, Savannah, I'm going to argue that bottom one is way easier to read and track and double check when you want to make sure you haven't made a mistake in typing. You can put brackets to show multiplication. I won't stop you. It's really not worth doing. And you're doing extra work. Also, you'll notice I use fewer keys here. Hit enter. We should all get the same answer. You'll get. Now, how do I read that? I don't write down 4e minus 6. What is this an abbreviation for? Now, some of you might not have the e. Some of you, yours might actually say what? 4 times 10 to the negative? Yeah. Some of you might say 0.000004. You can write that, although I might convert it. Is that what yours has? Okay. I will show you later on how to switch that into scientific notation using your calculator. There is an obscure button where you can have it. Oh, that's what it is in scientific notation. Or you can do it in your head if you're like I can do it in my head, and it's less work for me to do it in my head than hit the buttons on my calculator. But if you're a little shaky on scientific notation, it's built into your calculator. I can find that. I did my calculator rant that first day for a reason. I'm going to write 4 times 10 to the negative 6. Example 2. Is this a fraction? Is there more than one thing on the top? I'm going to open up a bracket. And sorry, Erica, it's really tough to keep track of brackets on those things. That's part of the weakness of them. So this is my get a good calculator rant. 5.8 scientific notation 3 times 2.67 scientific notation 21. Close off the top. What does a fraction mean? Divided by. Is there more than one thing on the bottom? Bracket. Oh, they got a negative. Make sure I use my negative button, not Logan my minus sign button. That's a completely different operation. 9.24. Scientific notation, negative 3. Oh, what else do you see outside that little bottom bracket? Exponent to the 5th. You'll need to find your exponent button. On mine, it's this little hat-looking thing. It's a Shift 6 on a computer keyboard. I think it's a carré. Mine looks like that. Some of you might have an X to the Y or Y to the X button. But the nice thing is, remember I said that if you use the scientific notation button, your calculator treats this all as one number. I don't need to put that thing in brackets with the exponent on the outside. My calculator knows that's one number if I use my scientific notation button. So it's less typing. If you can't find your to the power of button, I'll help you find it in a couple of seconds. And then there's a times 1.3 scientific notation negative 1. If you've done this correctly, you should get a negative, a 1, a 0.786, and a bunch of other numbers, and then I get times 10 to the 36th power. Pardon me? No, there's rules for rounding off in physics, and that's tomorrow's lesson, or Wednesday's lesson. It's called sig figs. For now, go to 3 or 4 decimal places. If you did not get that, first of all, let's all write it down. Negative 1 point, I'm going to go, Jackson, negative 1.77 times 10 to the 36. That's a quick in theory review, or possibly, have you seen scientific notation before? I got the feeling some of you had seen this before. Where'd you do scientific notation in math? 9? Last year, okay. So relatively familiar, but I'm guessing your teacher might not have been quite so fussy on the calculator thing. I really want to teach you, if you bought a good calculator, to use the bells and whistles. What's your homework? First of all, I will come around and help those of you that didn't get example 2 correct or are wondering about how to do exponents. I can see some glazed eyes, but for now, there are some questions attached here. I have a website. What's my website? If you go to pitmath.com, and you click here where it says for today's notes, actually click Physics 11, and then click here for today's notes.